Fantasy football junkies, you are tuned in to the #1 source for fantasy prognostication. It's Testosterone Fantasy Sports with your hosts, Chef and Jesse. So listen up. Here's your chance to gain the edge over the competition and dominate your fantasy football league. Every week we break down all of the matchups and tell you who to play as well as who should ride the pine. This is the joint that every fantasy junkie needs, so check it out!
Welcome, football freaks and fantasy fanatics. It's Jesse of Testosterone Fantasy Sports on the set, kicking it here with my good friend of WCCO fame. It's Eric Nelson in the house. Eric, great to have you on set with us here for the Week 13 show, man.
Great to be on, my purple brother, and I'd like to thank you for coming down to WCCO a couple of nights ago and joining me in the wee hours of Thanksgiving morning.
This is what we do, and this is our favorite time of year as football freaks, which we are. It's all about the NFL season as it really starts to press on. We've got our purple hornucopia here on the set with us. Essentially, Eric, just kind of a jovial time of year as we give thanks. Thanksgiving this weekend, we give thanks for all things, and this show is dedicated to giving thanks to football. We love football.
Absolutely, and you know, the holidays are a great time of year, no question. But really, to me, the NFL and the holidays go hand in hand. I can't imagine one without the other, especially on Thanksgiving. I mean, it's been such a tradition to have games in Detroit and Dallas, and now we have the third game, the NFL Network game, that most of us can't see. When are they going to get that thing on basic cable? But, Thanksgiving football is fun. You know, I'm not a big fan of the Thursday night schedule, but the one time I like to see Thursday football, Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I like the Thursday night schedule myself, and of course I love the Thursday night game on Thanksgiving because if you've watched the show on a regular basis for years, you know Jesse is a glutton. I'm a glutton for food, and on Thanksgiving I definitely throw down with some extra love at the dining table, and then I like to chill out on the couch and veg out, watch 3 games back to back to back. That's the way I roll, Eric. So Thanksgiving, I got a lot of love for it. It's definitely that all or nothing side of me coming out, and the football, like you say, it just goes hand in hand. And what a great time of year.
Yeah, well, you and I are peas in a pod. We're football junkies. We sniff the chalk lines, and I can't tell you how many Sundays I've spent, you know, watching an early game, a late game, and now a night game, Sunday night Pro Football in America on NBC. I mean, I can't even begin to count up all the hours I've spent watching the NFL on TV or the time I've spent at stadiums. I mean, at all the Viking home games, a lot of the road games. When I did my book, I went to a lot of different NFL venues. And whether you're watching or you're there in person, it is a unique experience. And I love this time of year because this is crunch time. This is when you separate pretender from contender. But you know what? When we get to the 1st of January, I get a little down because the regular season is over.
Right.
And it just blows by like a bullet train. It goes so fast. I know we have the playoffs. I know we have the Super Bowl. But, boy, that NFL season goes so fast. So I'll be happy next year when we get 18 regular season games.
There we go. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We'll hope that all things are good in the new year. But for now, we want to revert back to the week that was last week. And for Purple fans, what a fantastic week it was. Our second trip, 2 weeks in a row, down to the wonderful state of Florida. This time, Eric coming out with a much-needed win. We played, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Vikings were triumphant. 30-12 at Jacksonville. Minnesota holding the Jags offense down in the second half. As we dive into kind of the nuts and bolts of what caused this victory to happen, the defense, like I say, held the Jags scoreless in the second half with the exception of the one safety, and really came out with a nice win on the scoreboard, although maybe not the most impressive win.
Yeah, aesthetically speaking, it wasn't a Picasso. This wasn't artwork. But, hey, you got the win on the road, on natural grass, blue sky above you. Hey, the Vikings don't thrive outdoors. We know that, which is odd. I mean, they used to be a team that was an elements football team, snow, rain, ice, whatever.
Sure.
Sunshine, they would do well, but now they're in the Metrodome. So when they go outside, there's a transition. But the Jacksonville Jaguars may have been one of the sloppier teams I've seen play this year, especially the start of that game. I mean, you've got the center Meester not realizing David Garrard is in the gun, thinking he's under his butt. Now, I don't know how you don't know that.
No kidding, man.
And he drops the snap up there, and Napo says thank you. And Napoleon Harris has a touchdown. Then you have the fumble on the kickoff return. Cedric Griffin gets the fumble recovery. And bingo, you got the return or the reverse by Bernard Berry, and you got a touchdown run by Chester Taylor. You're up 14-0. The Jacksonville Jaguars, it was like a finger painting. They were sloppy.
Absolutely.
I mean, they had no rhythm at all, and they look like a team that's just off track.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about the Jags at the beginning of the season as being this type of squad that could potentially go 11-5 or 12-4. When I looked at the schedule in the preseason, that was a game I certainly thought the Vikings would have a very, very hard time winning. And it certainly seemed, watching that game, that the Jags were just fine handing the game to the Vikings. I mean, when you look at the nuts and bolts of the contest, it does seem like we may have been outplayed, in certain aspects if the Jags wouldn't have been so sloppy. They outgained us 321 yards to 226 yards. And, they held Adrian Peterson in check for the most part, just 80 yards and a touchdown, although he didn't play for the first two series. He got in trouble with the coach. But really, I think the formula for the Vikings is pretty simple. It's shut down the run. We did shut down the run. And, when we play mistake-free ball, which we did for the most part, Gus had an ugly interception. You give yourself a chance to win, and win on the road, we can't bitch about a win.
No, you never throw back a win, especially when you are on the road down in Jacksonville, Florida, which historically is a tough place for NFC teams to go down and win games.
Right.
I mean, the Jaguars have owned NFC teams at home over the years. It's funny, too, because everybody's wondering, how do you stop Adrian Peterson? Well, I've figured it out. You somehow fix his watch so it's a little bit behind and he's late to a meeting.
Right.
Then Chile will sit him down for a couple of series and you don't have to deal with him. But the beauty of it is when he did come in, they were up 14-0.
Right.
Josh Scobie missed a couple of field goals. I mean, the Jaguars really, I thought, were going to get back in the game and had every chance to do so, but they never were able to get over their own mistakes. I mean, they were tripping over themselves all day.
Completely.
And when I think about this Vikings team, and I'm not sure if this is a good thing, Jesse, or a bad thing. I'm going to say it's a good thing. I'll look at it positively. They had a game against Detroit I don't think they should have won.
Right.
The bogus PI call late in the game set up a field goal by Ryan Longwell. They had the game in New Orleans on a Monday night where I can't believe they won.
Yeah, impossible.
But the Saints also made a ton of mistakes. Reggie Bush ran wild that night in the Superdome. You have the Jacksonville game, even the Houston game. The Texans were moving the ball up and down the field, but Matt Schaub and then Sage Rosenfels were turning the ball over.
Yep.
So the Vikings have won games where I think they've been outplayed. And maybe that's a good sign. Maybe the Vikings still haven't played their best football yet.
Yeah, well, we're definitely hoping they haven't. I mean, looking forward to this week, the huge Sunday night matchup. I mean, essentially first place in the division on the line because the Packers got trounced on Monday night, which was awesome for us to watch. But when this game gets going on Sunday night, essentially, Eric, it's for first place in the division because the Bears and us are tied for the division lead right now. And really, when you look at the schedule and you're talking about an NFC North Division championship, there's nothing you'd want more than a game at home in a week 13 or week 14 where you can go against one of your rivals, and if you win, you're in sole possession of first place. So to me, this is nut-cutting time. I want to see the squad come out on Sunday night. I expect the Vikings to play really, really well, and this is a chance for Brad Childress to show us, to me, that he is the coach of the future. This is a must-win game, much like that Green Bay game was a couple weeks ago.
I think you're right on the button, and it's a little bit like the Green Bay game. I'm thinking more along the lines of that Washington game last year, the Sunday night game, where the Vikings were very hot at the time. Sunday night, the Madden Cruisers in town, John Madden, Al Michaels in the booth, and they had a chance to really knock Washington out and take control of the wild card picture. And I thought Joe Gibbs out-coached Chile that night, and the Redskins as a team thoroughly outplayed the Vikings. So it's a similar situation. I think it's analogous this Sunday night. You've got the Bears coming in, NFC North rival. It's going to be electric in the Metrodome. I mean, the fans are going to try to blow the Teflon into the sky. But for them to do that, the Vikings have to play well. If the Bears jump out on top, you can take the crowd out of it. Lovie Smith is a guy who's been to a Super Bowl. I respect him as a coach. I think Kyle Orton has gotten better as a quarterback. This rookie, Matt Forte, had a big game against the St. Louis Rams last week down there in the Gateway City. Chicago defensively, to me, that's the key. in that first game, as you know, Jesse, they had 3 of their 4 people in the secondary injured. So the Vikings moved the ball at will, even though Chicago won. Chicago won because of there was a muff by Charles Gordon.
Yeah, we had 5 turnovers.
Kluwe botched a punt, if you remember. So Chicago's defense has to step up, and I think they probably will. I'm sure they're going to throw some exotic looks at Gus Frerotte and try to make him throw some more picks.
Yeah, this is definitely a part of the game that has me concerned. We haven't seen Gus Frerotte playing very well, although his record is much better than Tavares Jackson's, where Jackson was 0-2. I believe Gus now is like 6-3 as a starter, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a big game for Gus here. The bright lights are going to be shining. It's on national television, and as you mentioned, Eric, he's going to have to make some plays. We can't hide Gus Frerotte in this situation. And so when I look at this game, I think it is also a big game, a call-out game, a statement game for Bernard Berrien, because you look at him a couple of weeks ago, earlier in the season, he had a 4-game stretch where he had 22 catches in 4 games. In his last 4 games, just 6 catches. So Bernard Berrien needs to make a couple big plays to keep that secondary honest, give Adrian some room to run. I mean, we can't beat the Bears just sitting on the ball and playing conservative. We're going to have to score some points.
Yeah, I think they've got to be aggressive in their play calling. And what I do with Berrien, obviously you want to establish the run, and you should, with Adrian Peterson and Chester Taylor. That's the top tandem in the NFL, in my opinion. But I would make sure I get the ball to Berrien, preferably in space. You can do the hitches and then see if he can get the yards after the catch, little slants, and then set up the deep ball. I'm going to throw 4 or 5 deep balls to Bernard Berrien in this game just to make sure the Bears are stretched out.
Absolutely.
They play that Tampa 2. Lovie Smith loves it, so the safeties are going to be way back there. But if you can keep them back there, that's going to set Adrian Peterson free. You need that threat of a passing game, and Adrian Peterson will be even better. But this is going to be, they are going to butt helmets Sunday night.
For sure, man.
And the Chicago Bears need the game badly. I think the Vikings need it a little bit more for this reason. If they lose, they're 0-2 against the Bears. They would lose out in any tiebreaker because head-to-head record would be the first criteria.
For sure.
And they haven't beaten Chicago.
For sure. And the other thing that's really big for the Vikings here is looking at the rest of their schedule. They do get the Lions here in a couple weeks, which should be a gimme, but the Vikes seem to play down to their competition from time to time. But let's not forget, they've got some other giants on the schedule, as it were, playing the New York Giants later in the year. I believe in the last week of the season, they're going to have to play a very, very game Atlanta Falcons team, and they will also have to travel down to Arizona to face an explosive Cardinals offense. So this is the kind of game you have to win at this point in time if you want to take the top spot in the division. It's really a must-win game, and I personally think it's going to be a very hard-fought game. I don't think either of these two teams is going to blow one of them out. I'm hoping that the Vikings have enough tricks up their sleeve, enough plays, possibly a big run by Adrian Peterson, because he has had his way with the Bears throughout his 3 career games against them. But Eric, I fully expect a hard-fought game, and just like earlier in the year when we lost to Chicago by 7 and it went back and forth for a while there, I think this game is going to give everybody their money's worth at the Dome.
Yeah, I'm sure NBC is pumped up. I mean, it's NFC North football. It's going to be rock'em sock'em on the field turf for the Metrodome. 2 long-time rivals. I mean, the Vikings and Bears have been playing football games twice a year since 1961. So, I mean, let's face it, Minnesota-Green Bay, that's the big rivalry up here. And in Chicago, it's Bears-Packers.
Right.
But if you're going to go just outside of that little loop, Bears-Vikings is a big one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, you go back to the very first game in Viking franchise history. Some young guy named Fran Tarkenton engineered an upset of Mike Ditka and the Chicago Bears at the old Mets. So, I mean, there's been a lot of great games over the years. But it's funny, you clicked off the remaining schedule for the Vikings, and you left off one game, and that was the one at Detroit, which is a week from Sunday. And obviously, you look at the Lions, and you figure they're just going to be a speed bump. You're going to be able to beat them.
Right.
But as bad as they've been, and with Dante Culpepper at the reins now, he's going to be jacked up. I'm not saying they'll beat the Vikings, but we saw what happened here. Detroit should have won the football game. I've never seen a worse PI call in crunch time in my life. I'm saying this as a guy who's rooted for the Vikings all my life. I thought the Vikings got a gift against Detroit. The other thing I want to bring up, the special teams, as we know, has been an Achilles heel as far as punt coverage, kickoff return coverage. I mean, there have been a lot of returns against the Vikings this year, 6 to the house. But Ryan Longwell, on the other side of things, the field goal kicker, boy, he has been very reliable. And you know, look at Scobie.
Sure.
Missed 2. Look at Mason Crosby in the game at the Dome. Missed the one that could have won the game. I think we're lucky to have Ryan Longwell.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to eschew the responsibility of a great kicker. I mean, you got to be able to make that game-winning kick. You got to be able to make those clutch kicks in the second half. And as you mentioned, Eric, this game could very, very well come down to a big kick late in the game. I think as a Vikings fan, we all hope the team comes out on top. And realistically, we're going to be thankful for a win. Thanksgiving, we got the Hornicopia here, and we're thankful that you're along for the ride. Jeff here in the next segment, he's going to be bouncing on with another good friend of ours, Zach Miller, I believe, stopping by. And Eric and I will be back a little bit later in the show. You're tuned into Testosterone Fantasy Sports. Stay tuned. We got a great show coming up, and we'll be back right after this.
Want to win, you must tune in
to Testosterone Fantasy Sports.